What the heck?
So, everything just like everything just went. I think I overloaded it. I over penciled. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the. We had a bad render. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to your favorite pandemic podcast, Pencil to Pencil. We are in the building. We're live and in color. And we're back again with our second episode with our new co-host, Steve Conley. I'm Jamar Nicholas, friend and fellow.
Friend. Just friend.
Just friend.
Just friend. I'm your friend.
I'm just your friend. That's our. We'll keep it simple in 2022.
But you're not John Leno.
We'll mix it up. But yeah, I'll just be Jamar Nicholas, cartoonist and friend tonight. I'm joined at the proverbial hip by my best bud and Master Chief and Full Bird Colonel of Comics, Michael Manley. Hello, Mike. And also, again, welcome everybody to our new co-host, Steve Conley. Steve is an amazing addition to the podcast. And if you missed us last week, you missed his bio. So you'll probably just have to go to his website and learn more about him.
Don't you have a wiki? Don't you have a wiki?
Yeah, don't you have a wiki, Steve?
I don't want to talk about it. Okay, I do not. I had one. It was poached by a professional footballer, American footballer, not a footballer. Donald Stephen Conley stole it from me. I think he's not officially a Steve Conley, so I feel like it was stolen. But no, there's no wiki for me.
Oh well, what did they actually remove your wiki? Is that what they did?
No, I got it was shunted over to Astounding Space Thrills. So there's a Wikipedia page for that where it's like there's a disambiguation where it says, oh, if you're looking for Steve Conley the cartoonist, he's over here at the kids table. That's sort of
Well, I mean, I know, there's the Michael Manley, the head of Jeep Chrysler.
You're
right?
not.
There's Michael Manley, the late prime minister of Jamaica.
So, isn't there also a Mike Manley who's a author? Is that also true?
I think there was a Mike Manley who was an author, and there was another guy who made I think microphones or something like that.
So he's spelled his name M-I-C Manley.
Right. Well, I guess because in comics, my credit is always Mike.
Not Michael.
He is Mike Manley. My credits on cartoons is always Mike, usually Mike Manley. People just call me Mike, right? So
that's funny.
Michael means like I'm in trouble. Michael.
Oh, Michael. Michael, who broke the lamp? But it's funny, and I know some of you guys know that it's very easy to confuse me with other people who happen to be brown and have names with the letter J in them. You would think it'd be a little harder than that.
Hey, it's Brown J. Hi, Brown J.
We talk about the King Ghidorah of J problems. Myself, Jamal Eigel, our buddy L. Jamal Walton. There's Jamal Campbell. And if you put us all on the line, there'd be a couple people who couldn't figure that out. But I've said on a million occasions, I know 75 Scotts. I know about 250 Mikes. I know, you know what I mean? I don't seem to get confused, discuss. But there are a lot of Jamar Nicholases, I think, that might...
also, isn't there like Jamar, the people that make the
sand Jamar?
Yeah.
Sand Jamar, the toilet paper people.
Right.
I've got more than one bathroom pick from somebody like, yo, you made my toilet seat cover.
Fresh and safe.
There's also a place called Jamar Grinding. It's like kind of like a tooling place.
That's a Jamar's private sex site.
JamarGrinding.net.
Yo, girl, it's Jamar Grinding.
Yo. So this is a week of first, you guys. One of our first is that if you are on Mike Manley's Facebook page, you might be seeing us streaming.
Am I?
He's gonna crash the internet now. Well, let's look. It should be up there. So what I'm trying to do, and maybe Steve will put you on, I don't know if that crosses the streams too much, is just to kind of like, widen our base. It's still funny that there are people who follow all of us on social media who don't know we have a podcast.
Right.
So maybe, I don't know, Steve, we could kind of talk about the algorithms. I heard somebody call them the Al Gore rhythm. You see? Because remember, the internet is not a large truck. It is a series of tubes. So, like Steve, as our resident webcomic cartoonist, how do you deal with people who say they've never heard of your stuff after following you? Because I'm sure that's true, right?
I don't blame them. The system, for the most part, it punishes outbound links. Like Twitter does that, and Facebook does. Reddit does not so much. I don't think they do that from an algorithmic standpoint. I think they just have it as structural, just the way they're. If you post a link, it looks different than if you post, say, if you upload an image. If you upload an image, if you upload content to Reddit, it kind of is featured in a very different way. Whereas if you post a link, it's just smaller. So it's more of a design consideration on Reddit. But Facebook and Twitter, their algorithms really punish outbound links. So if you've got a Kickstarter, people don't find out about it till the last day. It's like, or the campaign's over and then people find out about it. I mean, that happens all the time. I mean, everyone is running a Kickstarter. A campaign ends and 2 days later, someone's like, "Oh, what Kickstarter?"
Right. So, yeah, I've been at the end of that myself.
Right.
Now, what if you pay them to do promote your Kickstarter?
I still don't think it's all that valuable. Well, I hate the boost your post stuff. This is like, I mean, there goes our sponsor of Facebook. But also, if you badmouth the algorithm, I'm sure that punishes you as well.
It's true. If in the last couple of days, I've been getting all these like shitty ads on Facebook, which I always complain about, and I don't want to see it anymore. And I think what they do is after you build up enough of them, they go, "Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah, nothing but my pillow ads today."
And as cartoonists, we spend like 24 hours working on an illustration. We work really hard on an illustration. We post it, 3 likes, and we upload a picture of our cat and it gets 50 likes. Right. Or update our profile pic and it gets 150 likes. It's just
cat. I will tell you for a fact. Whenever I post a picture of Mr. Fetchin, always get tons and tons and tons of likes. Right? There's something in that algorithm. I'm convinced that they know that's a cat, and right.
So that's our tip of the day is make sure if you're going to showcase your book, make sure you've got a pet in the photograph. Have your book photobombing the cat photos.
Right. Yeah. I was actually having a little bit of a discussion on my wall or whatever they call it, because this is actually a subject that comes up quite a bit. Do you pay for promotion? And I would say that it's much more of a concern for people south of 40 and people south of 30, because our careers were formed before, to a great degree, especially mine, since I'm older than you guys, before the internet, right? And so I have an audience that adopted the internet as I adopted the internet, right? Now you have a lot of young people, and I see a lot of young artists, and they complain about the fact that, like, wow, last year I was posting stuff on Instagram and I was starting to gain a certain amount of likes and a certain amount of followers and a certain, presence. And then all of a sudden, squash. They squashed it. They squashed it at the same time. They were trying to get everybody to do a video and they were trying to get you to basically turn Instagram into TikTok, which doesn't really work for us artists unless you're posting a video or something. But I see an awful lot of young people, and some people that some of them I'm close to, worry an awful lot about and stress over Instagram and their penetration in social media. Like, oh, I'm putting this up, not enough people. Why did 900 people like this one? Nobody's liking this one. Why do I get more people like me on Instagram, or I get more people like me on Twitter, and I'm not getting anywhere on Instagram?
You didn't have minute by minute Nielsen ratings for your sketchbook back in high school, Mike?
You know, and there's a lot of agita amongst the young folk, because they're like, I think they feel that they have to have a presence, B, well, people have to like me, and if they're not liking me, that means that that in some way my work is not valid. I don't have enough likes. It must mean that people are actually looking at my work and going, I'm purposely not going to like that. You know what I mean? Like they're shunning. And it's like, well, do I need to rearrange my account? Do I have to put only certain things on my account? Do I have to have one account for this, one account for sketches, one account for finished art, one account on Instagram for my bullshit, you know, whatever, my things I like? Or I see a lot of that in just my observation of seeing many younger people's posts and what they talk about, and what seems to be a big concern to the younger.
I think a lot of people are telling people. A lot of people are saying that, oh, you have to have a big following on Instagram. I mean, in your world that you're in, Jamar, the especially like Scholastic and those publishers of, you know, kids graphic novels, they care about those numbers, don't they? Don't the editors, and don't they? I mean, I hear people asking, okay, how many followers do you have on social media? Because they expect the artist to do a lot of the promotion now.
Are you an influencer, or are you not an influencer?
Well, you know, it's funny. I'll hit the ball back across the net, Steve, because I've been hearing that from some of our buddies who, you know, do mainstream work, right? It's kind of like I have a couple of buddies who are kind of like knocking on the door of Marvel and DC, and some of their headhunters and the talent scouts and stuff are sniffing around their Instagram and checking to see how many thousands of followers they have. I can't necessarily say that that's part of my deal at Scholastic, you know what I mean? Or I don't think they said yes or no because of, you know, my 2,000 followers on Twitter. But I'm sure maybe if, I don't know, I think there's truth to it. I don't know how sticky it is. But I do think there is a part of it where you are expected to do a lot of your own lifting as far as promotion. I think that's just a real thing across the board.
Yeah. So their desire for big numbers on Instagram is not unfounded, right? So there is a real effect that it can have, right? I mean, if they can say that, okay, you've never heard of me, but I've got 15,000 followers on Instagram, the person might listen to them a little bit more. I've got 100,000 followers on Instagram.
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, not that I have, you know, proof of that, but it just makes kind of 22 cents.
Right. Well, somebody would go in, and like if you go in and you have the professional account or whatever,
yeah,
and you can log and you can track your numbers, how many accounts you're reaching, how many people are going to your homepage, how many people are liking, how many people are commenting, how many people followed you, how many people unfollowed you, all of which, of course, you have no control over, right? You can post something and you can put hashtags, but you have no control over whether, like, why did one post get 40,000 people? Something you actually think is better or more interesting got 900 people, right? No. Now, and you can pay to advertise that, right? Because I would do that with my Skull Kid drawing to get a little extra promotion. I was experimenting. Okay. So I'll pay the, what, $30 or whatever it was, and you could supposedly reach so many more accounts. And it seemed like for a while that worked, and then it kind of like
it just went back down.
Yeah, right? It didn't seem to have any effect if I did it or if I didn't do it. But it always reminds me of what my agent Jean-Marc Lofficier said, that everybody wants to be first, to be second, and everybody wants to basically, if you're successful, like if you're Mobius, right, or you've got 25,000 followers on Instagram, oh yeah, I want to be your friend because you've done all the work for me. I just get to show up and take 10% of your income, right? I'm not necessarily going to go out and build another 25,000 people, but I will take a percentage of what you're doing, because I get now, since I've gone over 10,000, I'm constantly getting all these emails. Hey, influencer. Right. As if I can influence people like Professor X, go to your wallet, remove $5.
Well, they just want you to put these sunglasses on, Mike, and stand next to a car, and then...
Right. Yeah. And a young artist I know who's doing fairly well. So she's having a fair amount of success. We've talked about this stuff. I think she was very perplexed about some of it. And I said, well, the direct market response to advertising, like all the stuff you get in your mailbox, 1 or 2%, right? So they mail a bajillion flyers, hoping that 1 or 2% of those people go, oh yeah, I need to have my carpet steam cleaned, right?
That's so random,
right?
Yeah.
But when I used to work back in advertising, that's what I always heard. It was 1 or 2%. So I would imagine it would probably translate into probably pretty much the same thing on social media. If you had 50,000 followers, 1 or 2% of those people are going to give you $1.
Okay, so let's say something actionable about that. Let's say that you got, knowing that the advertising diminishes, the effect of advertising or boosting a post diminishes over time. You should save that for when you really have something to promote, like a Kickstarter or a new project or something like that. Because if you do it too soon, the system will build up a resistance to you, and lower the effect. Or maybe it's one of those things where you get in the system and they're like, just giving you a taste, and then just pay a little more, and you can get those likes.
It did change. I will say I know for a fact that last year, I did notice that Instagram did change, because I was steadily building every day, every week, a certain amount of followers, and then it kind of went down, right? The growth cut, right? And then I would try the promotion thing, and that seemed again to work for a little while. I wouldn't promote everything, but just like my own personal stuff, whatever. That seemed to work. And then they cut it again, because I think what they wanted you to do was the reels, right? They want you to make the reels. So I'm assuming that they're all algorithm on all of these platforms is always looking at your age, who you're friends with. They're getting the feedback from all the other places like Amazon, what you're buying, what your buying habits are. They're tracking you across everything, right? And they're constantly choking your feed. They're constantly saying, you know what? We're only going to show you this. We're not going to show you these people, or we're going to show you these people that are in this demographic that spend this with our people. I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff like that.
Right.
That they're doing constantly.
So maybe the big question from this part of our conversation is, one, it's like, what are you doing to generate thousands of followers on any social media platform, right? And maybe it's a little, I can't even say it's different or not different for you, Mike, because you, just to talk about you in front of your face, you have a pedigree. You post nothing but fire art all the time, right? And and you're super consistent versus somebody who kind of does it a little bit, blah blah blah. Like, I think there's a difference in having a couple hundred followers and 40,000. And I wonder where the, like, what's the middle of that sandwich? How does that happen? I don't know. Maybe you could talk about that, and then I'll ask another question. Is that a goal for you?
I mean, I think the goal obviously is you want as many people as possible to see your work and to like it, because that's good for you as an artist, right?
Sure.
Good for your career, it's good for you, good for your ego, makes you feel good. It's nice to see. I mean, every day I'm probably following a couple new artists that somehow I've come across them in my feed, or somebody else posts them. But like I said, I think my advantage is that I'd already had a 20-year career by the time social media started. So I already had a group of people who liked my work. Also, all of my contemporaries and all the people that I worked with, they're also on social media. So that also gives you sort of like an ecosystem to work within, right? The other thing that I think that I learned, I should say, is that people are also interested in your story with an artist. And I talk about this a lot with younger artists, because I always encourage them to put their process up so that people can, like, fall in love with their story, right? Here I am 17, here I am 19, here I am 22, here I am graduating college, here's my first job, here's my first comic. You can go back and look at my early comic, you can look at what I was doing last year. They can fall in love with your story, which is not something that was very easy to happen when I was 19 or 20, because there was no internet. So the only way people actually saw your work was actually you physically sent it to them.
Right.
Example. Where you had work published that people could go, oh, okay, who's this person? I like that person's work. So, but at the same time, you sort of have to be aware of that. I mean, that's where blogs were big for a while. I think when I went back to school, I was blogging my whole process of going through my undergrad and my grad program. That was very successful, and I got a lot of feedback. In fact, a lot of people went to that school specifically because I was posting my journey, and they got to see what it was like going to the school. So they said, oh, there's a girl from Iran who went to that school because she saw my blog. So I think that's another way of getting people interested in your journey. Then they're sort of like invested in you as an artist, right? They can say, oh, I saw this person's work. And you can talk about your journey. You can talk about your process. I think that makes it a little bit more personal than just go feed the machine, feed the machine, feed the machine, feed the machine, feed the machine.
What did you tell the cartoonists or creators who are not that comfortable sharing their story?
They're being silly.
There you go.
Get over yourself. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the people who say, "Oh, I don't want to put my stuff up because somebody's going to steal it." You should be so lucky.
That's true.
So the work is so good that somebody actually wants to steal your work. You're starting out, right?
I love it. Yeah. The dog likes it too. I mean, just to maybe like sidebar this for a second, that is it's usually a concern from an amateur who just is kind of like, there's like a failure to launch. Like, it's a yeah, but that feels like a yeah, but to me, like I want to do it, but they're going to steal my dope ideas, but and there's nothing to show.
This is going to be making a movie of your shit.
So I don't know. I think maybe the divide there, as we talked a little bit earlier, was about with the younger people who grew up on this stuff and who now it's part of their mix, part of their algorithm, is that I think it has a different importance than it does to us. I mean, it's obvious, but also kind of it reminds me of like early web comics, and maybe Steve, you could talk to this, when everybody used to look at their Alexa scores or whatever. You remember that?
Sure.
Is that what it was called?
That was one of them. Yeah. And various page rankings and all the, people come out and say, I've got 1 million hits. And then, oh, it's about page views. And then it's not about page views. It's about, the amount of time a person spent on a page. And it was about, did they go to another page within your site? Basically they were
Yeah,
continually, moving the goalposts of what qualifies as success. Because as soon as you create a metric, there's a bunch of people out there who want to game it, who want to be like, oh, no, oh, I can do that. I can pay you $15 and you can have that metric. It's like all these, you can go on to Fiverr and get yourself a few thousand Instagram followers. Maybe they're humans. Maybe they're accounts. You know what I mean?
Is that like those games where like I really don't want to be a level 400 sorcerer, so I'll pay this guy to give me the road.
Exactly. It's like
staff. Right?
None of these fake people are going to support your Kickstarter. You know what I mean? So I don't know why so all you're doing is creating a fake number in order to swindle somebody else with this fake, status.
Right. So, but here's that though. So let's go back to Mike Manley's 190,000 followers, or however many people you have on Instagram. And not to put anybody's business in the street, but it's kind of like, do you actually see any type of uptick to any of your stuff because of that giant following you have? Or is it just kind of like, I don't know, like warm fuzzies? Because I know we all sit back and go, like when you write on the back of your math book, if I had 40,000 followers and they all gave me $1, I have 40,000 tacos, that kind of stuff. But like, do you see any type of change in?
I do try to.
What I'm saying?
I do try to track it, and I come to. I think we talked about this before on the podcast.
Yeah.
I have 3. So I have Twitter, which is the most useless of all my social media, and I will probably be getting rid of it because once he lets Trump back on there, then it's kind of dead. I have the least amount of followers on there, and I get the least amount of traction, and I get the least amount of response or penetration on that platform because I don't really think it's for art. It's for people who want to get on there and tweet, which is not really what art is, right? It's not. It's not. I don't feel for me it's a good fit. Facebook is mostly older people. Older people have money. Older people spend money. Older people will buy my books. On Instagram, I have a different audience depending upon what I post, right? So now there are just some people that are Mike Manley fans, and anything I post they would like because they like my work. But if I post landscape painting, some people are going to like it. Other people could give a rat's ass about any painting I ever did. If I post a drawing of Batman, that gets the most because most people who follow me like Batman, right? If I try to break it down as a demographic, it's mostly male, about 80% male and 20% female. What I'm trying to do is to grow the female stuff, the female audience, right? But I realized probably in order to grow the female audience, I'm not going to please as many of the male followers because as I studied Instagram, the artists with the highest female following tend to be animation artists, manga, anime stuff. And so for the people who are in the native Mike Manley fans have come along. They're not really into that stuff. So it's sort of like you've got 2 or 3 audiences. The overall Mike Manley audience, which is small. The Mike Manley mainstream comic audience, which is the biggest. And then the other female audience that likes maybe my non-superhero stuff. Right. The goal is to grow the overall audience, hopefully large enough that when I start doing my Kickstarters and thing at the end of the year, I'll be able to pull enough people, 2%, 3% of those people, which would be enough to make the Kickstarter successful. You know, I'm not looking at the Kickstarters like I have to have 10 million people following me and 10 million people, because I don't believe that that's realistic, right? But I do believe that if you wave your flag every day and you do put out quality artwork, your audience will continue to grow, you know, and they're always going to be adjusting the algorithm, and it's never going to be an even playing field, right? It's never going to be fair. It's never going to be just, you know, it's never going to be about good taste, right? It's just going to be about however that algorithm favors you that day. You know? Hey, maybe there's 10,000 hashtags of Batman, and one day there's only 4, and yours gets more notice because of that. I don't know. You know, it seems like there's so many random things, but I do know that if I don't promote myself, Cartoon Network is
so part of it is like, I think
nobody else is going to do it.
Part of it, I think, is the fan art quality. Like if I do fan art of something, like I did a Rorschach Yoda mashup because it was a request as a fan. Someone who I like Watchmen and I like Star Wars, so I did Yoda with the Rorschach mask and the little hat, you know, and it was like, you know, and just some reverse Rorschach into Yoda ease, kind of like mangle the sentence order, and that got a ton of likes. Also, there was one where it was like, you know, Black Manta from Aquaman, like he had the helmet and it's off and it's Stewie because they had the same football shaped hand, and
that's pretty good.
I also got a ton of likes. So it's stuff like if you do fan art, I mean, that's a way of breaking down, but that doesn't mean. That feels like chasing likes and chasing the attention, because that doesn't mean that audience is going to translate into, oh, because you like this mashup I did, you're going to therefore like my webcomic about a silly knight. So it feels like what you were saying about the story, about being yourself and keep putting it out there. And, you know, and Twitter and Instagram feel like, you know, lottery scratchers. Every time I post one, it's just maybe it'll take off and maybe it'll win me something. But odds are it'll cover the sandwich. It'll buy me a sandwich maybe one day.
Right. I mean, like I said, I posted in the last month something that I did when I was 19, a Batman logo for like I think it was first year design class, and I came across it in the attic. So I just, this is interesting. I forgot I did it, and I posted it. Bajillion people like that thing.
Well, that's the Venn diagram of what you were talking about, Mike. It's got your story and it's got Batman. That's perfect.
You have to read it to get the story, but just people liking that image is just why that image is not certainly not. I don't feel the best Batman image I ever liked, but again, who knows why sometimes things resonate with people. You know, as an artist, you can do something and you feel, oh man, I really did it. This is the best thing I've done. And people are like, meh. Yeah, sigh.
That reminds me of that old commercial. I've done this one before, where this guy's at his computer and he goes, there it is, I'm done. And his wife comes in and goes, what are you talking about? I finished the internet.
Right.
So there's a good question. Our buddy LG, what up, LG, says, what do you do if you produce more than one very different art discipline for Patreon, Twitch, etc.? So I guess they're asking, like, how do you split the streams? And maybe is it problematic to have too many things in too many different places?
Well, that goes to my point earlier, right?
Yeah.
People, I do many things, and I personally, as an artist, am interested in many disciplines in art, right? And I know some of the young people ask this very question, like, should I have a character design blog, and then
Right.
I have a background blog, and then I have my or Instagram or Twitter, and then I have my web comic thing, and then I have one for my life drawings? Or do I not put my life drawings because people like, oh, I don't want to see life drawings, I just want to see
Right.
the mermaids or something.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot. And I mean, I guess what's the answer there? Is it really dependent on what your audience can stomach? Or like what has the biggest ping? Like if your life studies maybe get 7 to 8 likes versus you drawing pictures of people's cats as commissions.
Well, I follow some people that just do life drawings, and they get a lot of likes, but that's all they do, right? Like some people just do one thing, like they just paint landscapes, right? They don't even do figures so much, they just do landscapes. And I love their work and I follow them, and I don't have a problem with that. Other people do different things, right? I don't think you can know that until you do it for months.
Right.
See what your feedback is, right? Because the churn is greater every day, right? There are more people on Instagram today than there were a year ago. There are more artists alive working today than ever before in the history of the world. More people graduating and coming into their teens and becoming interested in art. And now here's this wonderful invention that I can share my art with the world. So I think you have to put the stuff out there and see what grows. Like, oh, I'm getting more response to this, which is what I like, or people don't like this thing as much. That doesn't mean that you don't put it up, right? You don't show that. I mean, if your point is to just try to cultivate likes for some ultimate purpose, I don't know what that would be, then you're really going to have to spend a lot of time tracking things, and you're not really ever doing what you want. You're trying to do what you think the most people want to see. And that wouldn't be very interesting to me, because probably what they want to see the most, I wouldn't necessarily be interested in making.
And it's exhausting. Let's not forget that part, because everything we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes is more work.
Right.
Right.
For no guarantee of pay.
Right.
And it speaks to the idea of having like different pen names, like, the idea that you might have this pen name to work in this genre. If you were a fiction writer, you might have this pen name to work. If you're going to work in this genre, if you're going to work in a different genre, you have that pen name, and you wouldn't work all under the same pen name, or you wouldn't under your actual name, because you think those audiences aren't going to mix in a way. Like the people who do this aren't going to be interested in that. And if I send out a newsletter update to everybody, it's going to, half the audience isn't going to be interested, or half the audience is going to unsubscribe. So I do think there's two things. There's either, if you're going to be dedicated to two different crafts, like I'm doing the 3D modeling and I'm doing my cartooning. I've been doing a lot of 3D model posting to Instagram, and that might be a place where I just post that stuff. And then just my cartooning will be Facebook, all the other Twitter, things like that. I don't know. I might create a whole other thing for that, but it's more like, if you're going to dedicate your time to both of those things going forward, then building individual channels is probably the right way to go. But if you're just taking the temperature and trying to decide what should I be doing, or it comes back to what Mike said about your personal story. If the idea is you're the brand, and let's say I'm a creator, I'm doing all these varied things, follow me and see how I do all this nonsense. That's kind of the approach I've been taking. That it's a catch-all for all these different things, and some of them are going to be good and some of them aren't. But I do think if you were going to be, if it truly is something you're going to dedicate a ton of time to, then having two different channels makes sense. The way, I don't know, Dave Kellett has a Patreon for the Drive comic strip and a Patreon for the Sheldon comic strip. 2 different Patreons, 1 creator, 2 different projects, and that seems to make a lot of sense for him.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But I think you have to be willing to put the seeds in the ground and see what grows, because some things are going to grow and some things are not going to grow. And I don't think you can really know for, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. I know people are very impatient. That's the other thing about social media is I think it tends to make people impatient. You want immediate feedback. You want immediate likes, and they know for a fact, I know that Instagram knows for a fact there's tons of photographers and painters and cartoonists, and they're new people every day trying to launch accounts, and they know that. So they're going to try to structure it in a way that forces you into these boxes that work for them. I want you to make nothing but reels, right? Every time I log in, I get this you get that little present. Oh, do you want to set up your thing now? Do you want to set up your reels now? You want to set up your financial thing? And it's like, no, I don't. Instagram, no. So I think my advice is to just do it. Try to post every day, because the algorithm does favor you posting once or twice a day. I do know that.
They want your daily offering. The algorithmic gods want your daily offering.
Yes. So, I see people on Twitter, not on Instagram, but I know that there are recruiters who post on Twitter, animation recruiters. And so I know a lot of people think, I got to, I need to. We're looking for such and such at whatchamacallit, Titmouse or wherever. And then people, everybody wants to send their stuff. And I don't know how honest that stuff is in the end, whether you get any kind of feedback or you're just throwing stuff down a hole. You know what I mean? I know that these there's plenty of companies that try to take advantage of young people to get you to do work for less money. There was one going around, one of those scams where they said, we like your work. We want you to draw this thing. And then they send you the wrong check.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and then they try to get you to refund the money.
Oh, for goodness sake.
You know what I mean? It's one of those scam things like that,
Wow.
So, there's a lot of that also on social media. That was going around a couple times last year.
That's a whole different type of hustle, rather than what I know a lot of us are used to when that guy emails you asking you to give them free comics and sketches.
Yeah, I got one of those guys that's doing that now, and it's like, in general, I'm happy to do drawings for people, but don't be my friend just to ask me like, hey, can I come over and go in your refrigerator and eat all your food? That's cool, right? I just love food. And all these other artists have let me come and, they've all done it for me.
Right. And I think people don't know that, artists try to get scammed on all the time by that, like the fake charity thing, or, can you sign these things for me and just send them, and, they'll go into a nunnery or something like that.
And it shows that the best worst of it is, send your little daughter over with a big stack of comics. Mm-hmm. We sign all these, because nobody wants to be mean to a little girl, right? And I said, okay, I'll sign 10. That's it. It's like, and then they want to put like certificates of authenticity and all that other.
You're so precocious.
Oh, what a scamp.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of put a little pin in that, LG says about themselves, I like creative freedom to do what I inspired to do. Galleries and agents won't want you in a tight little box, which makes it easier to them.
Sure.
I think that's interesting. To this, our buddy Tim Fielder, who always has a lot to say, if I can find his posts, talked about his. I guess we're talking about artist algorithms. Like, what is it that you're doing? What's the components in your batter that makes your stuff flow? If Tim says, fascinating technique, it's what I'm doing now with my Samuel Delaney Nova adaptation. Nice plug, Tim Fielder. The idea being to, one, promote the work well in advance so I'm not dependent on publishers on the back end. 2, generate and build audience. And 3, hold myself accountable with weekly updates. I think Tim brings up a really important point that if you're just kind of logging onto the internet every morning and just like throwing stuff into the wind, hoping it gets caught on a light pole, I think you're missing part of this, part of the point of this, right? Even if you're being random, like I know Steve, you're not just doing stuff just to do it. There's a larger goal in mind down the road. Am I wrong?
No, it's, everything I do has got a purpose. It might not look like it if you follow me on any of the streams, but there's a purpose to it all. It's to create content, because at the end of the day, the only thing we really have is that we're selling is our effort, and so I want to make sure that the effort is applied to, something that I can, not necessarily monetize. That sounds crass, but something that, well, I mean, it's not. I mean that in the idea that the story I'm telling, if I can finish this story, not my personal story, but the idea that this story of every day I'm building it, one more brick in that thing I'm building. And if along the way people are interested in watching how these bricks are laid, and how how I'm building this thing and what I'm thinking along the way, I think that's super interesting. And if I can have a mailing list and have all these different social media things, but every one of these social media things we've been talking about, I feel like all have like an expiration date on them. Like I can build up this massive Instagram following, but it won't be valuable in 2 years. So I don't want to invest too much in it. Facebook, hey, you get a Facebook page, and then you have a page for your project. And I'm sure we all get invitations to like a page every single day, but currently I like probably 3,000 things. It's impossible for Facebook to show me all the updates. I couldn't possibly scroll through it. So if someone makes a Facebook page update and people don't see it, I can't blame them, So I don't know. I don't know.
Well, you've been on the internet and promoting your stuff and creating content from
the beginning, right?
A long time, and you've seen each one of those things, like you said in the beginning, was like hits, and then how long they stayed on your page, how long they looked at it, where they went after they went to your
sure, yeah.
All that stuff was in the very beginning, right? And it's still in there. All that stuff they're still using all that stuff,
right?
But you're like adapted to that environment. You've grown new scales, you've grown new as that environment changed, as you've gone coming into it right now. It's very different than when we started. Very different than when you started, right? I mean, you were just like hoping to get, I mean, a lot of in the beginning, I remember there was that duty.com, the guy that just did the little animations of guys like throwing turds into a toilet every day, right? It was just like a little GIF animation.
I remember those things.
There was a lot of things like that where it was just, you're at work, oh, what's on this thing? What's on, just some stupid little thing that people would be amused by.
Right. The guy that put things in a cartoon blender and the eyes went around.
There was a lot, and we're still basically doing that, because you can go right now on Instagram and it's just an endless feed of like cats slapping dogs, people falling, just like stupid videos of birds dancing to what I mean. It's just like this endless churn of things. right?
That tickled me. Yeah.
Um, just the freak show, that's just constantly parading for you, and then you as an artist, no matter what you're doing, you're spending hours to do it, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you put it up, and you are competing with somebody who has videos of truck nuts.
Is that trucknut.org? Is that where?
you know,
.net?
Or
Um,
kitty cats wrestling in the street or something.
Well, I mean, to what you're saying, it just makes it that, like you said, it makes it that much harder for you to get anybody's attention because, there's the relationship skits, or like there's the camera in the corner watching somebody cheat on their girlfriend. All of those things are going on at the same time where you're trying to post pictures of Batman.
Or let's say you're doing like Steve, you're doing a weekly comic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're doing a web comic. And
here's a thing you've never heard of.
Right.
Please click on this thing you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And come back and invest time in it.
Right.
Become interested in it. When there's also this other stuff, this like torrent of other stuff just hitting you and they actually push it at you now constantly. In a very aggressive way that they were not even doing like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you don't, I mean, like I know some people that don't have a Facebook now, and I know there's some people like Phil Hester and people like that mostly seem to be on Twitter, and they tweet often during the day, but that just doesn't, I want to put my drawing or my image, share art or whatever, but I don't feel it's like the kind of place I can really have a conversation because you type 150 words and then you go, oh, part 2, part 3, part 7, and then somebody replies to part 2 and like, what? Wait a minute, where did I get? Somebody replied to me. How can I get back to it? It's really awkward to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Hey, let's switch gears for a second. And for anybody that came in late, welcome to Pencil to Pencil, your favorite creative podcast where experts in the field of comics and cartoon illustration talk to you. Yes, you dear viewer. So feel free to So feel free to ask us questions. We'll do our best to answer it. And then in the upcoming weeks or so, we're going to start sprinkling in guests again. So the guests are coming, but I think we're just as interesting as any guest, don't you? I agree. Mike, our good buddy Eternity Forever. What up, gang? Eternity Forever says, Mike, can you tell a tale of your Wonder Woman posts from Facebook and what attention it had?
Which Wonder Woman? The big, beautiful, the chubby Wonder Woman?
I'm not exactly sure what Eternity's talking about because you post stuff all the time. I know you're just posting a lot of old like Batman 500 pages.
Yeah.
But what's maybe did you post some Wonder Woman stuff?
I posted some Wonder Woman. It was interesting. If you post a chubby woman, like I posted that one Batman drawing where I made Batgirl chubby, right? It's just cartooning, right? And the Joker is weird and skinny, and so many dudes were hating on the fact, why is Batgirl fat? Why is Batgirl fat?
Oh, they don't know about my blog, do they?
I tweeted so many mean tweets about this one little chubby draw. It just like gets under some guys, so baby men, as I call them, just get way under their skin. And to me, it's sort of like if you post a chubby Wonder Woman, it's like posting a chubby Superman, right? It's cartooning, playing with the opposite of what the character usually is, right? Just like, you might draw a witch with a really pointy nose, or you might draw a skinny Santa Claus, right? I'm sure if I drew a skinny Santa Claus, people would be like, why are you drawing a skinny Santa Claus, right? So for some people, they can't accept the idea that you could draw a chubby Wonder Woman, right? And you're not necessarily making fun of fat people or whatever. It's just sort of a fun cartoony drawing, right? It's like drawing an old Superman or a fat Batman. You know, I've drawn chubby different characters, but for some reason, man, there was another one I drew like a black Batgirl, and like,
oh, I remember that. And they were like, "What?
what? Why is she black? What? What? Is that in the comics? What?"
Mike, can I speak on this on the curvy Wonder Woman thing? Because a lot of, and I'm not claiming to have created this, but a lot of this goes back to my blog.
Right.
So it might have been what 2005, 6. It was a while ago. I made the what was it called? The BBWW blog, the Big Beautiful Wonder Woman blog. And at first it was called Fat Wonder Woman, and this is before all of the hashtag body positivity things. This is before all of that. And I kind of, a lot of cartoonists just have sketchbooks where you pass around at the convention and people, there's a theme. Like Mr. T on a Moped was my favorite Rico Renzi sketchbook. And I think maybe Mike and I were just kind of hanging out in his living room, and we're just drawing. And I was like, "Yo, let's draw this fat Wonder Woman." And I think Mike drew something. I inked it. I think that first one, Mike. And then it kind of turned into a thing from there. And I started this blog, and I just invited cartoonists to submit things with no context. I thought it was a really interesting social experiment because American cartoonists generally made a fat Wonder Woman who was slovenly or eating or like with like dimples in her ass, and she was smoking a cigarette. It was like the extreme of some sort of grossness to them. I didn't put any words in anybody's mouth. That's what they projected.
Right.
A lot of the cartoonists I got from overseas, like Greece and things, had a totally different image of what that looked like. It was usually like a strong, powerful, woman that kind of messed other people's heads up. So I thought it was really interesting to take what I think fandom has created Wonder Woman as the perfect woman. I don't think Marcia ever said that's what Wonder Woman was, but that's another projection. But then to make her, I guess like overweight, that kind of throws off people's conception of what that is. So I'm thinking 85% of the Fat Wonder Woman sketches you see on the internet came from my blog.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And there's definitely a large section of young men who hate the idea of her not looking like Linda Carter.
Yeah.
Actually, and Gail Godot doesn't look like Linda Carter. You know, Linda Carter is like the old fashioned boom, Marilyn Monroe kind of, and the modern Wonder Woman is a lot more like a CrossFit Wonder Woman, right?
Lululemon Wonder Woman.
Yeah. So it's just interesting because as a cartoonist, you're just drawing something that's funny, right? You're not like you might draw I've drawn fat Superman, right? And I've drawn fat Batman, right? Or I've drawn really skinny Batman being beat up by a chubby Wonder Woman. It's just you're just having fun with playing around with the archetypes. But some people do not have a sense of humor about that. They get offended that you draw their heroes. Not it's like what? How could you draw Wolverine and I draw all the hair on his arms? Right? I never had a woman object to those drawings. Only men.
Yeah, I think especially with Wonder Woman, I think it kind of it digs right into a really interesting sore spot in people. Like you've offended them in a weird personal way. Just with Wonder Woman. Anything else is fair game, I guess. But also, I don't know. Fat people are the last thing you can make fun of. It seems like in the world
right now in our culture, the last people that you have complete free shot at is fat white men.
Mm.
can't really make fun of plus size women now, right? Because there's all these constantly different changing terminology. Even at King Features, there's certain words and certain things that you, I guess they're not PC, and you can't really call somebody that now. Certain terms that you can't use that everybody used, but now are not correct, right? Now, of course, next week those terms might all be changed for some other term because somebody at some university will come up with another way of saying fat, right? They won't say fat, they'll say, ergonomically, uh,
Mhm.
dense or
Mhm.
what, they'll come up with some kind of weird thing like that, right? Um, and also part of cartooning, uh, certain types of cartooning and humor cartooning is being transgressive, is poking the sacred
Mhm.
cows, right? I mean, that's one of the problems that comedians face now, right? Is that people go, "Oh, you can't make fun of my sacred cow. You can't make fun of this. You can't talk about that. You can't poke fun of this. You can't poke fun of that." Um, and I think that with cartooning, everything's sort of fair game. If you want to put it out there and you're willing to stand up for, your joke. So it's just sort of it's interesting with those few posts where there was the black Batgirl and then the chubby Wonder Woman. Some people loved it, but I can't tell you how many, and they were all
Mhm.
young guys. I was just deleting, and they were always the most cliche
Well, ha-
you could
well,
imagine, you know.
well. Let me ask a quick question to you guys about the. I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. Like maybe during the Alex Ross era of hyper realistic superhero comics, where DC and those guys started really leaning heavy into the mythology of these characters, right? And I think that ties in very interestingly to body image and hero worship and the perfect whatever, the perfect archetype of a character. And I think we all grew up drawing super muscular people punching, people through walls. And anytime you kind of push against that, it kind of messes with people's idea of what comics even mean. So it's always interesting to maybe like kind of come back and talk about that a little bit. Like, are we past that? Does Black Adam have to be like Dwayne the Rock Johnson to be cool? You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there.
So much mixing into that whole thing because as a kid, if you drew Superman, you were just drawing Superman. And he was a superhero and he was strong, he could fly or whatever. And you weren't really thinking about all this other stuff.
Right, all this
Oh, yeah. It
Right.
was like Space Ghost or whatever, like Man or whatever it is you liked when you were a kid. Right. You were Ultraman, whatever you were, Godzilla, whatever. I had a friend that was really into Godzilla, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were just into that character, right? It's the adults who fetishize this stuff. And for them, the idea that Batman is real and Batman has sex with Wonder Woman and
I like the way you said that.
Batman is a penis, right? Um, as a kid, I loved the Batman TV show, and you loved Catwoman, and she was, sexy and dangerous. And there was that level at which at 6 or 7 you're not paying attention that an adult is going to see,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they still kind of played it straight. Like now, yeah. I mean, I couldn't even imagine. Could you imagine when you were 8 years old, they're making a Batman comic where they're showing his penis?
Right.
Why do you have to do that? And now the fact is geek culture is mainstream culture. the culture that I grew up being a fan of as a kid, we all did. Star Trek, Star Wars. That is our culture now. That is our American culture. Is this what was at one time called geek culture? But there's also a part of that where you want to have sex with Princess Leia or Han Solo or Chewbacca, whatever you're into, right?
Or
You were just playing fantasy with that stuff as a kid, but then you grow up, right? I mean, there's all that stuff with the cosplay and all the stuff that gets mixed into that. It can be read on many, many, many different levels. Some women dress up as Wonder Woman as empowerment. Other women look at Wonder, and I remember having this discussion in the master's program with one of my teachers. She viewed any woman dressing up as Wonder Woman as being dominated by men.
Mm-hmm.
Dominated by men. So if you're a female going to the convention and dressing up as Xena or whatever, or Batgirl or Harley Quinn, that's because you desire to be desired by men and dominated by a male culture. And I go, that's, I'm sure if you talk to those women, 99% of them, that's not why they're doing it. But, that old feminist idea was that, like, no, you cannot, these two things cannot mix. You know what I mean?
Mike, our good buddy Shelley, read Dick Tracy, you guys. Shelley also says, I also see some of this about age. Nobody wants to see an elderly Wonder Woman, I bet. So, ageism, I'm sure, has a really big place in all of this.
It is interesting, though, that I was watching the latest Boba Fett, watching Picard, and it's a much older. The average age of some of these casts is really higher than it's been in a while, I imagine. Short of Murder, She Wrote. This is like a,
disgusting. You need to be in the back of the tank.
But it is interesting that I'm surprised that the casts are older.
But when I was a kid, everybody on TV was old.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All the TV shows were like, guys that were like
Steve McQueen.
right. We're in there. What Shatner was 36, I think, when he started, 34 when he did Star Trek. I mean, everybody was older, right? Most of the major movie stars were in their 40s, 50s, 60s, right? Now, everybody's got to be, we got to keep casting them, making them younger and younger and younger. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be older because I wanted to be like the characters that I admired, and now it seems like, no, everybody's got to be 25, and there is a pushback, I think, there is a ageism. I experienced a little bit of it on my last project I worked on a little bit. I think in animation, there is some ageism now, which is really dumb when you think about it, because of Walt Disney, who basically invented animation and invented the way animated films are made, was prejudiced against the people who helped him forge his empire. As they aged, the company never would be what it is today, because it was always the older artists, each generation taught the younger generation, right? Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston taught the next generation of people, and those people then teach the next generation of people.
Mm-hmm.
Entertainment, we're in this thing now where it's like, oh, you're over 40. I mean, even here in Silicon Valley, I've read articles where they talk about if you're in your 30s, it's like you're done. You only want the 20s. And nothing against people in their 20s, but if I look at myself in my 20s compared to where I am now, I know way more than I knew when I was in my 20s, and I'm a way better artist than I was in my 20s. So,
but you would work for less when you're in your 20s, Mike.
Well, depending, because again, this sort of dovetails maybe into our other topic we wanted to talk about, which was the passing of Neil Adams and George Perez. I was very aware of as a teenager, partially because of people like Neil Adams, about the business aspect of being a cartoonist, and that generally, as you got older, there were many sad stories of older cartoonists who ended up on the wrong end of the drawing board. You know what I mean? Where they didn't plan their careers, they couldn't adapt, or they were alcoholics, or they got screwed over business wise. I was very aware of that as a teenager. From reading the Comics Journal. Wally Wood died in 1980. He was a favorite artist of mine, and his was a pretty sad story. A very, very sad story. And comics is full. And that generation, the greatest generation of cartoonists, is full of a lot of real sad stories. So I was very aware of that as a teenager and as I was coming into the business. So I'm not just going to take any job and like let you screw me over. Maybe you take a job that's not paying you so well, but it's an opportunity that you can use for something else. But I think you have to always keep in mind that you're a businessman dealing with other businessmen. Your business is your drawing and your skill that you are using in working with these other people. And you have to think of it just like if you were a plumber or a guy who builds building, a carpenter, the same thing, and if you don't, that's where you end up being sorry down the road. I remember I wrote about this on my Facebook page. Neil Adams was the first artist I became aware of. It was Neil Adams and then Jack Kirby. It was because Jack Kirby went to DC and they were promoting, the King is coming, the King is coming. And I was buying those Jimmy Olsen comics. And I loved Superman as a kid, but then suddenly those Superman comics were like, it's like, wow, he's fighting these monsters and stuff is like really dynamic. And that's when Neil Adams was doing Batman. And I remember the first comic, which was that Batman 241, the one with the big Two-Face on the cover. I remember buying that at the little store down the street from me and reading that. I was like 10 years old.
Wow.
And he was the first artist that I was aware of he made me want to be a cartoonist. So I was like 10. And then in 1975, my family we moved to Ann Arbor. And in Ann Arbor, there was a comic book store. And so I went to that comic book store like just about every day.
What's the name of it?
Ayabagomoto.
That's the best name ever.
That's amazing.
Amulet, right?
That's amazing.
And Norm Harris ran it. He was an awesome guy and very encouraging to me. And so I was really hooked on Neil Adams and was buying, back issues and stuff like that. And then I got the art of Neil Adams, which I still think I have.
I was going to the vault. I love
it. Somewhere over here on my shelf. Can I find it? Can I find it? Can I find it?
Come on. He said the Dusty Toad. That's a great name for a comic book store.
Dusty Toad?
The Dusty Toad. He's not gonna find. He's got it good. And guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight and just allowing us to chop it up in front of you.
All right, this is the second Neil Adams. I don't know where the first one. It was over. I thought I saw it the other day. I have so many.
And where else are you going to get this, Steve Conley? A window into the soul of cartoon.
Anyway, this is the second one.
It's fantastic.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, I got the first art of Neil Adams, and in there it said they had the address of the studio of 9 East 48th Street. And so when our family took a trip to New York in 1975. I decided I was going to go up to Neil Adams' studio. And we did. I went over there, went up. It's kind of hard to remember everything now, like 47 years later, but I went up and took the elevator up, went into got off the elevator. I'm in the vestibule. There's like no art on the wall. I had no portfolio. I had no art. I just wanted to go and see if I could, meet him. And I talked to the receptionist, which I believe might have been his daughter, and said, "Oh, I'd like to see Neil Adams." And she's like, "Well, basically you can't. That's not possible." I'm sure she's like, "Who's a nut to meet Neil Adams?" And so I was, looking around. I see if I could see in the back or whatever. I couldn't see him. So I didn't meet him. And I was a little disappointed, although I was excited that I actually, I went to the mountain, didn't meet Muhammad, right? I didn't meet my my hero. But years later, when Acclaim was relaunching, he was up at the launch party, and I got to meet him, and he came up to me, and it was funny because I'd seen him at shows, but I'd never really gone over and talked to him. So that was the first time I really talked to him, and he comes over to me and he goes, "Let me guess. I'm the reason you became a cartoonist." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." And then, we talked a little bit, and I told him my story about how I went up and I met him, or tried to meet him. And he thought that was pretty funny. And he goes, "No, we wouldn't just, we wouldn't let somebody in off the street or whatever." And I bumped into him a few times over the coming decades. Once with Tom Palmer, and he and I had a nice conversation. And the last time I saw him was at the EluxCon, which is an illustration convention they have, or had every year. Mm-hmm. Have it again this year. That COVID's down. And he was there, and I had Mimi and Liang in tow, and I was sort of explaining, showing him his stuff and explaining, and he starts talking about how, he used the Gillette 291, and only he and Stan Drake could use that pen. It was too much pen for anybody else. So more people seemed to use it quite well. But so yeah, it was interesting getting to meet a person I admired so much, and really was the person that inspired me to want to be a comic book artist. And I've met a few of my heroes, and it's always dicey because you can meet somebody whose work you admire, and they may not necessarily always be a very nice person. Mm-hmm. But and the other story I guess I will relate is that I don't think I've ever met George Perez, but very often when I was younger and had a lot more hair and a beard, I would have people come up and mistake me for. And I remember when I think we were at the Penta Hotel, the one that was across from Madison Square. And I was sitting there talking to Bob Campanella, and this person comes up, and they've got all these comics, and they're all like, "Oh," and Bob thought it was funny, and Bob goes, "That's not who you think it is." Oh. He goes, "You're George Perez." And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not George Perez. And they're like, "Oh," they go away with their, So that's my brush with greatness.
I love it. Thank you for sharing.
I just think it's, when I think about it, it's like the chutzpah I had as a kid to go like, I'm going to go up and meet this guy, but I don't have any portfolio. You know what I mean? I don't have any, I never went up to continuity, even after I moved out east or whatever. I never went up there because I live in Philly. So usually when I would go up to Marvel in DC, I would go up, do my business, and then come back home. So I never went over there, but I know other people, a lot of people, he helped launch a lot of different people's careers.
Yeah, and the impact obviously is stellar and far-reaching, and it's always interesting to see how, and maybe this is kind of morbid, but how you're starting to see mainstream news outlets report on the deaths of these people, but they don't really celebrate them while they're around. I mean, maybe that's just our culture.
Well, I was talking to Brett about this the other day, and I said, well, I mean, let's face it. I mean, guys like Neil, there was the two most important comic book artists of the past 50 years, Jack Kirby and Neil Adams, because they're sort of like at the polar opposites. Jack Kirby created comics in a way that still give us the industry that we have now. And then Adams brought in that polar opposite of realism into comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have no Alex Ross, right? You wouldn't really have any of the realistic styles without him bringing that, Stan Drake, realism from Johnson and Cushing, where he studied as a young artist. And as a kid, that stuff always riveted me. I mean, I used to buy these comics because they had these awesome Adams covers, and then you get home and they're like, meh, like the insides, nothing against Kurt Swan or whatever, but it was like never as cool or as intense as those covers. So yeah, I mean, I don't think we would be looking at Batman cartoons and movies and stuff if it wasn't for what he and Denny O'Neil did with the characters. As successful as the TV show was in the 60s, it was like that, right? And the success of the comics came after the success of the TV show. So yeah, I think he's the most important. After Jack Kirby, he is the most important cartoonist to come. Showed that you could take this stuff and make it more realistic, and it worked, And I think what I see now is people doing stuff that maybe is more realistic, but they also don't know where to break the rules. Adams knew where to break the rules, especially I think after he started getting influenced by Gil Kane and Joe Kubert. You can see the first 3 or 4 years of his stuff was a little bit more straight, a little bit more timid. And then he really just exploded, and he affected the entire industry, and I don't think we will, now the industry is being affected by the Japanese comics, by manga, but I don't think there's any one Japanese artist that's like that, right? I mean, there's like Otomo, the guy that did Akira or whatever, but there's any, even though you have Tezuka, I don't think there's any one Japanese artist that affects people in the way that Adams affected the American comics, or Mobius affected the French comics.
Sure.
What, Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I got to meet both of them a couple of times at various conventions. George Perez was pretty much the nicest person in the world. If there's a scale of niceness you can't surpass, where he put when he was building the character sheet for George Perez, they put all his points into niceness, and then once he maxed that out, every other point went into art. And super nice guy. I mean, courteous to people, thoughtful to fans. I remember being at a convention, set up next to him, and you've all set up at comic conventions. If you're a creator, you get there early. You set up your if you're conscientious creator, you get there early. You set up your booth, and you're waiting for the hall to open up. And there's always a couple of people who have snagged a vendor badge from from either a retailer or somebody else, and they're not vendors. They're art hunters, and they've already camped out in front of the tables of people, and he was basically shooing them away, like, no, you're not. I'm not here for you. I'm here for the, it was he was there for Hero Initiative. It was always for a charity, and he said, we've raffled these off for Hero Initiative, or you got to buy them from Hero Initiative, not from me. So there's no point in camping out, and if the line got too long, he'd be like, okay, everyone over here, please leave the line. I will not be able to get to you. I don't want you standing around all day and and then wasting your time. It's super nice. And Neil Adams was probably like, synonymous with DC Comics when I was growing up. I mean, I had reprints, like paperback reprints of Justice League and things like that, and it was all Neil Adams work. And it was like, it blew me away that comics could be drawn like that. It just looks so different. It's like, oh, that guy can draw, or that's what an arm is supposed to look like. Yeah, I was used to.
Arms supposed to look like if Neil Adams drew it. Well, somebody said, would Neil Adams people look like what they would look like if they were drawn by Neil Adams?
But before that, everybody looked like balloon animals. You know what I mean? There was like a bicep that was a balloon. There was a forearm that was a balloon. But when he got to it, it's like, oh, there's triceps and there's all this. He distorted the heck out of it and took shortcuts as for dramatic effect and for time probably. But heck, it was dramatic. And suddenly you got a taste of that kind of working. Oh wow, not a lot of these. It raised the bar for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there had been people who were more realistic, like Russ Heath, and sure. There were people that like Lou Fine and people back into the 40s, or Alex Raymond, people who did the newspaper strip. But he brought that lineage of Raymond and the realism through Stan Drake and that advertising art that was going on at the time,
right?
Like Briggs and people like that. He brought that in to mainstream comic books, which there really hadn't been anything like that, because you had the Wayne Boring Superman who looked like he never passed a gravy boat, right? It's like, oh, more gravy? Or like that old-fashioned big, bodybuilder. But when Neil Adams drew Superman, he didn't look like George Reeves. He looked like Christopher Reeves, and he looked super, and then the black and white realism aspect of realism and the way that he rendered hair and cars and suits, and that's one of the things I remember as a kid that really impressed me, is because even though I loved Jack Kirby, right? So I had this thing where, like, I loved Kirby, I loved that stuff he was doing with the D and Aliens and Jimmy Olsen and all that stuff, because that was like Superman was fighting monsters and he looked really strong. But then Neil Adams drew this stuff and it looked real. That's the only
right.
You describe it when you're 10 or 11, right? You go, oh, that looks real compared to like.
I say that now.
Right. Right. Yeah. Real, right?
Yeah, that look real.
And then you as you grow as an artist, because I think that's the thing, it's like you see something and that's the fire that sort of lights the fire. That stuff lit the fire under me, so that when I saw that stuff when I was 10, and by the time I was 13 I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I was going to see Neil Adams. I don't even know what I would have said to him, honestly. But I knew when I was that age that I wanted to be a comic book artist. And then 10 years later, I was a comic book artist. And then, several years later after that, I'm actually drawing Batman. So it's a whole circle, like this journey. But it all started with me seeing that one comic, and it just like was like an explosion in my brain, and I'm sure everybody else has some kind of a similar story. There was something you saw,
right?
Some comic strips, some comic books, some image, something somewhere.
Yeah, that triggered you. Basically, it's the beginning of your superhero origin story.
Well,
you falling into acid, right? You falling into vat of acid, or whatever.
Exactly. Well, one of the things what happened when I was at school, they would have career day, and then you have the parents who bring little Jimmy. Oh, little Jimmy wants to be an artist. Do you think that that's okay? And you try to explain to him. Well, Jimmy's 10. A lot of paper and pencils. If he wants to be an artist, you won't be able to stop him. If it's just he wants to be an artist until he discovers girls or hot rods or whatever,
or hot girls,
then he won't be an artist. But if you really want to be an artist, all you got to do is give the young artist stuff to make art with.
I've thought the opposite. Like, as a cartoonist, if you can be stopped, you will be stopped. Like you have to be willing to. You have to be unstoppable. Otherwise, you will. Something's going to get in the way. Something's going to trip you up. Something, Well,
that's true. I think that's true. But I think all three of us are examples of people that had obstacles put in front of you, yet you still achieved the goal that you wanted to achieve.
Right? As the kids say, we're going to risk it all.
Right. And we all had wingmen we knew when we were younger, who all said the same thing. I want to be a cartoonist. And I can tell when I have a class of young artists, I can almost just like scan the room, and I can tell the people that are going to do it. There was a couple times where you have a class of young people, and then there's always the guys like coming up, and I call him like the spit mouth. He's like all excited, I can't wait. That guy is not going to make it. The weird person that's sitting in the back of the room, is quiet, and has a sketchbook, that's the person that has the chance of making it. Not the person who's,
all of this.
On the dance and all. Yeah, no. That's not the person who's gonna, and when I meet young artists, I can tell whether the person, you really have to have the personality for it. I think that I was fortunate in that I had the personality for it, and my parents and my grandparents were supportive of me. They didn't try to discourage me from being an artist. Probably in a way because my grandfather was an artist. He was a commercial artist. We talked about before, he was a display letterer. He used to do lettering and calligraphy. So that was in the family, that you could make your living as an artist. I know for a lot of people that's hard because they don't know anybody who was an artist. Right? They don't know anybody. And, when I was teaching that class at the academy, the majority of the students were students of color. And in the Black community or a lot of the Hispanic community, there's not a lot of support for people being a visual artist. Right? There's not a lot of knowledge there of somebody who knew somebody who was successful as a visual artist. Maybe you didn't even go to a museum. Maybe you didn't go and you've never been to see what an artist's workplace was like. So there's a lot of things that might be going against. Not everybody has an equal playing field, but I think if you really have the desire, it's almost like I think you really are unstoppable. It's not that it won't be hard and you don't have setbacks, but
Right.
If you have all the advantages, but you really don't have the personality, eventually you just give up.
Right.
I have we're going to start wrapping it up, you guys, but I had a couple of things popping in the chat I wanted to address. And there's some new things in StreamYard where I can actually like highlight a comment so I can come back to it. That's really exciting. So our boy Notorious JRD, who asks, is there a creator still with us you all feel the need to thank for their inspiration while you have the time? So this is what I affectionately call giving people their roses. So we just threw this in a room, but I don't know, Steve, anybody come off the top that makes you feel needs to be appreciated?
I don't know. I mean,
No
there's
pressure.
So many, all
No
the
pressure.
time. No, it really is almost everybody. It is almost. I mean, I don't mean it. There isn't. I mean, I've tried to reach out to people. I mean, I would write Ditko back in the day. I mean, I was basically just like, I want to thank these people.
Did he write you back?
Yeah.
Do you have that letter? Was it framed?
No, it's somewhere. It's somewhere because it also includes the part where he doesn't want to do a commission for me. But he had nice things. He had nice things to say about Pat Boyette, though, which was nice in it. So I do have it. But
okay, that's interesting. You have to dig that out.
Yeah. But I try to make a point of doing that, like just because they're, again, Wally Wood was a huge influence on me, and he passed when I was 10, and it was like, these people aren't going to be around forever, and so I don't want to go to a convention and like say thank you for being alive right now. I don't.
Here's
but
thank you for not being dead.
Yeah, thanks for after 2020, I feel like I gotta tone it down a little bit. But yeah, there's just so many. I've kind of gone out of my way to do that. But how about you guys,
Mike?
Let's see. Well, we were talking about this a little while ago. Of that generation, there's basically Sal Buscema and Tom Palmer and John Romita, but there's not really
Jamar Nicholas
people from that from the 60s era, right? The golden era, right? I mean, almost
right.
All of my influences are on the other side of the Rainbow Bridge now.
I feel like Garcia Lopez needs to be carried around on a palanquin the entire time, like from convention to convention. He should just be carried around.
Like he's 10 years younger than all those. Well, he's 10 years younger than Adams and like 20 years younger than Romita. So he was a young guy coming in the mid 70s. But yeah, and I know him, and I worship I worship his pencil shavings. But yeah, it's not most of the guys who were a direct influence on me of that era are gone. I mean, I should write to Cy Berry, who's like 92 or 3.
Wow.
Write him a letter. I had started to write a letter to, I did send a letter to Leonard Starr. I don't know if he ever got it. And I was going to write a letter to Russ Heath, but then he passed away. So it's sort of like, you think like, well, what are you gonna say? Then you have to sort of get the person's address. But yeah, I think it's hard now because basically the Silver Age guys are almost all gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about you, Jamar?
You know what? It's weird for me because if anybody knows my origin story, I was a comic strip guy.
Right.
And then I came into comic books later. So I don't hold the same kind of esteem for people. I totally recognize the effort and the Mount Rushmore-ness of this conversation. But I personally don't have the same kind of stickiness with it. I'll say that I have gotten to meet a lot of my art heroes just being a professional. I don't really have any names to throw out, but even just like, working with Mike on the magazine all these years and being able to sit down and interview and just have like, Mike say things like, well, who do you want to interview? And I just like, wait, anybody? You know what I mean? It's just like, that exercise kind of opened up a lot of new relationships for me.
Borgman, right? You got to talk.
Yeah, like Jim Borgman is a great guy, and he's like a fantastic cartoonist, and he's an icon of comics comic strips. Even like my good buddy Signe Wilkinson. Like it's just kind of like the water that I swim in, and I think part of my personality is I usually like give people their props anyway. You know what I mean? So I think I could, die feeling fulfilled, or if somebody passed, I wouldn't be like, oh man, I wish I should have. Because I just try to do that on a regular. Even for some of you guys out there, Facebook, you get your Charles S. Dutton awards from me. You know how I do it. But it's just, I think it's just kind of part of being in the space that we're in, that you have every opportunity to go up and give people their credit. And also what I think is interesting is that they probably don't even know that anybody cares about them. Some of the things that break my heart is when you would see like, what was it? Marty Nodell, Lee Nodell. Who's the Green Lantern guy?
Yeah. Marty Nodell.
Marty, who would get like wheeled into the convention and just kind of sit there behind a table. It's like, you know who that is? I remember being at a show and go, you know who that is, right? You should go talk to him. And they just like pass it by to get the nachos. Like, I think we need, as an industry, we need to do a better job of lifting up our elders.
I think certain shows, Mark sort of does that. Nathan does that.
Yeah.
And
the Baltimore Comic-Con
does that. Yeah. Strangel's off the list, but.
What were you saying, Mike? You were going somewhere with that.
I was just saying at Heroes, I think they do celebrate the artists. But I mean, you go to the Reed Pop shows and the Wizard shows, it's really just about celebrities. You're just, they wouldn't care if maybe Stan, but then you got all those people like posing next to Stan, and he's like,
that's not funny, but it's funny. He's kind of like this.
Yeah. Like, sorry, I'm sorry. That's sad. Maybe Stan needs the money, but I don't know. That I find that sort of depressing. Because I mean, I briefly met Stan once years ago in San Diego. I guess I was also never the kind of person that just wanted to go up and meet certain people. Sometimes you meet people like Joe Kubert or Williamson, of course. He was great. I'm sort of glad, maybe in some ways, that I didn't meet Wally Wood, because how his story ended, and I think it would have made me feel very bad to meet him, because I would have been meeting him, obviously at the end, not in the beginning, and it would, I think that would be, I mean, it was sad enough to me that he died, but knowing Williamson as I did, and Williamson was good friends with Woody, and hearing some of those stories, it was just, it was just very, very sad. So maybe sometimes, like I sort of regret not meeting Buscema. I was at the last San Diego that he was at, and it was, when you're there, it's like so crazy and so busy, and you got your table and you want to go over and see him, but there's like a million people. And, okay, I'll go back, but then you never go back. So I never got to meet him. I did get to meet Joe Sinnott at a show in Albany, New York. Just the nicest guy ever.
Oh, I have one. And I just put this in the chat, and I don't want to embarrass anybody, but Ringo was a really high watermark for me. And You
And
know,
just nice guy, super nice guy.
where are you going? What is he doing? Oh no, hold that up. That's fantastic.
That's the
Hold on, let me
like the
give you.
first thing that goes in every studio I have.
Hold on, show it up. Put it up again.
It's Mike's Saturn Kid. Try to get
Saturn
without the
Kid.
glare.
Yeah, look at that.
Awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and it goes without saying how much Ringo meant to all of us. And you know, when he passed, that was that was rough in a lot of ways.
I think that was the first death of a friend and someone of my peer,
Yeah,
right? And it would be different if, like Perez, you know, here's a person who has a terminal disease, and there's a process of which that person was going. I mean, I kind of saw it coming with Neil. You know, I saw it coming with Adams after he had that first round, and then his podcasts or whatever. It didn't seem like he was going to be around very long. Unfortunately, I just really just had that feeling.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when Mike passed, that was like, it was, a shocker. So,
Yeah, it was like a shock and a phone call, and it's just like, what? Yeah, it was so much.
like I think I told this story on Facebook, and actually got a lot of people replied to it. I used to have a answering machine that still had voice messages from Mike that I never got rid of, right? But one day it's just
It just melted, right?
just died. But I kept that thing for years and years because it had his voicemails on it. I still have emails from him, from that old Yahoo group we were in, and I still have.
That's a secret, Mike.
Yeah. I still have. Well, that group is gone, so. I still have a couple of voice messages, I believe, from my friend and old teacher Patrick Connors, who passed away. And it's like you don't want to erase those.
Yeah.
At some point something will happen. But yeah, I just sort of felt like I couldn't erase his voice messages.
Yeah, it's real, and I think it just gives more proof to the thing that everybody means something to someone, and
we'll find. I mean, that's one of the things that every once in a while, someone will write me a letter or reply on social media to something that I post. And it will be something that I did was very important to that person, right? You're just sitting there sweating it out and doing your job, but you have no idea, nor do you have any control over what you create and how it goes out into the world and how it influences people. And I've had some very nice letters and correspondence with people who, looked at something that I did, and it was like a very, very important thing to them. And that really is like the best compliment I think you can get as an artist, is to have something you did affect somebody in a way. So I am assuming, somebody like Neil Adams is getting that like every day. Some year old or 50-year-old saying, you made me want to do this, right?
Mike Manley, you're my childhood.
It's like, oh, you poor bastard. I have had people tell me stuff like that, and it sort of feels weird.
It does feel weird, right?
Yeah, it does kind of feel weird, because I don't really. I mean, I have an ego, but I don't have an ego,
right?
In that way, because basically, I'm doing this stuff because what I want to do. I'm not thinking of like doing it for the ego coming in. I'm doing this because this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that that can go out and affect somebody in that way is, pretty amazing.
It's powerful. Both of us, me and Steve, kind of orbit around you a lot of times, and I think it kind of switches depending on what we're talking about. But even with like some of the graphic novel stuff I've done, and I've had people go, Jamal, I read Fistic Knife Gun and I cried, and I go, good. I'm glad, right? I'm glad you cried.
Well, we should, you got your firstborn is coming out soon. What's street date of
for Leon. So yeah, the
Leon the Extraordinary, which you can pre-order now. Is that the one we're talking about?
Oh yeah. Let me put the John in the chat. So Leon the Extraordinary, the first in my Scholastic graphic series. Yeah, JRD, tell them October 4th. I got my got my street team out here.
10-4. 10-4.
Right. And you're gonna have little kids writing you or coming up to you in 15 years and going,
with a dirt lip.
Right, with gray hair and saying, "You're the reason why I'm a cartoonist."
At least they're not like, "You're the reason I got divorced."
That's right.
But yeah, thank you guys so much. I had a little link. I don't know what I did with it. Here you go.
Available everywhere. It'll just be like laying on street corners all over Philadelphia.
Oh wait, hold on. Yeah, that's right. Wherever Johns are sold is where you can cop it. Hold on, I'll put it back up there. I'm really excited, and we're going to just be on the promotion train. So very excited. I'll talk about it as much as I can.
And you're working on number 2 now, right?
Yeah, I just turned in the script for number 2. So time keeps on slipping.
So by the time number 1 is out, will you be drawing number, or you have to be done drawing number 2?
Yeah, I think by the time number 1 comes out, I should be wrapping up number 2, and then on to number 3, and we'll see how it goes from there. So yeah, like just what was that from Aliens? In the pipe, 5x5. I love it. So, but yeah, thanks guys. I appreciate it.
Well, as long as you're not, sitting there with your body cut in half and like milk is coming out while you're drawing.
I love it. I need to go watch Aliens again. But yeah, thanks. And this is a perfect part of the episode to ask the fellas what are they promoting. Steve, tell us about the Middle Age, please.
I am the writer and artist of the webcomic The Middle Age. It's totally free to read online. There is a PDF edition which you can download for free until like tomorrow night, Friday night. Wait, no, Friday night.
Oh, that's right. You have a little promotion up.
And now you have to
follow that link along the bottom of the screen. And it is if you check out my website, go to the shop. It's free to download. It's like the first 20-something pages of the story is a PDF if you'd like that. Otherwise, just go to the site and read it all. It's completely free to read online, and I've got a Kickstarter in the works for later this month. So I once again, I really appreciate being here, gentlemen.
I love it. And also, Steve is very humble. He is an early webcomics pioneer. Nobody, you know what I mean? Like when we talk about these old heads who started that whole thing. Sorry, middle-aged Steve Conley.
Steve Conley, like Jeremiah Johnson.
That's right. You're part of that. Steve was doing motion comics before they even had a name.
I'm a young man. What are you talking about?
That's right.
I'm holding on to the youth with both hands.
You're the Dick Clark of comics, is that?
He's the Dorian Gray of comics.
Look at that. You're his Huckleberry. I love it. Thanks, Steve. And Mike, are you still promoting your t-shirt shop?
Oh yeah, you can go to I think TeePublic actually has a sale this month. So you can go to TeePublic.
Hold on, I have a thing.
You have it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then you can buy coffee cups and thongs and
Koozies.
yeah, thong for your coffee cup. A plethora of my images. In fact, I'm working on some more Skull Kid stuff now. I'll be putting up some stuff soon. And I'm actually planning my graphic novel of them that I hope to do a Kickstarter starting in this fall. So I'm trying to like rough out the whole story. And then once that's done, I'll draw up a bunch of pages and then I'll do a Kickstarter. And I think sometime this summer, I'm going to reactivate my Patreon.
Eternity says only if you have thick Wonder Woman in it.
You know what? I would make a thick Wonder Woman shirt, but I think I might get sued. I just have a thick action woman.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of a WW, it's a AA.
Right? Yeah. Just Thicula.
Count Thicula.
Count Thicula. Countess Thicula. There you go.
I love it. That's going to rule Instagram.
I should do it tonight. I should do a Countess Thicula.
So, Mike Manley, I know, and Steve, we're still in the planning stages of our new guest lineup for this new season of Pencil to Pencil. Mike, can you give a teaser about next week before we put the signposts?
Next week, we're going to have the team of Tom Yates and Mark Schultz, who do Prince Valiant.
What?
But also, of course, people remember Mark from Xenozoic Tales. And he does a lot.
Cadillacs and Dinosaurs.
Cadillacs and Dinosaurs.
Is it known amongst the peoples?
Right. And he does a lot of art books through Flesk Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom's been around a long time. He used to do Tarzan. And so they team up together and they work on one of the oldest comic strips still going, Hell Monsters, Prince Valiant.
That's awesome.
And Williamson used to say that Foster was the father of us all. He was really the first artist starting with Tarzan, who drew realistic comic strips. When he adapted the Tarzan into a newspaper strip before he did Prince Valiant. And actually, if you go back and you start to do the research on the Tarzan stuff, he was swiped more than anybody else.
Absolutely.
Those figures that you see in Superman, so many figures in Batman, of the early comics, people were swiping his Tarzan figures and then turning him into Superman and Batman. He was because nobody else had done that many action figures in comics. So the first comic strip guys were at the first comic book people were looking at the comic strips. Just like later, everybody started swiping Alex Raymond. But we're gonna have them on, and we'll talk about stuff like that. I think it's pretty amazing to have two such top people still doing a comic strip.
Still in the game. I love it. All right, you guys. So that's our time. So thank you so much. This was a very rousing episode of us, just as they say in the streets, chopping it up. Three old friends talking about the business for the benefit of you, dear viewer. Thank you so much. Pencil to Pencil is back on schedule. We'll be back here next Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST. Hang out for it. Tell your friends if you're on the tubes of you. That's very middle-aged, Steve Conley. The tubes of you. It's like a scrying pool with channel updates. Please like and subscribe and smash the alarm button. And
spread the word.
That's right. And also for all of us here, please support our endeavors, because we wouldn't be here without you, and we need your support, even as magnificent as we already are.
What's that link again, Jamar, for the pre-ordering Leon the Extraordinary?
Look at you! I love it. You're a great addition to this podcast, Steve Conley. Thank you. And go order the John. Go get Leon Extraordinary. Get those pre-order numbers up so I can buy a hydrofoil. All right, you guys.
A solid gold hydrofoil.
That's right. It's got to be solid gold or go home. All right, you guys, let's get out of here. So for my buddies, Mike Manley, Steve Conley, and myself, you know what to do, you guys. You know, we're still in a pandemic, so make sure you wash those curvy hands. Oh, I love it. So good. All right, you guys, see you next week. Thank you so much.